Welcome back to this week's podcast. And as we said last week, we're going to be providing you some clips of what we've been haven't been able, had an opportunity to air on our various podcasts throughout the year. And so we hope you enjoy, get a little insight into what we're about, what our councillors are up to, and the difficulties they confront. I must just remind you, I get messages all the time about how useless our councillors are, because residents are presuming that we have a functional city administration, that things are working well, and therefore the council should quite easily resolve these issues. And it's simply not the case. They are working under very difficult circumstances with a dysfunctional city. So we're asking you to please understand that we have a dysfunctional government, provincially, nationally, and in the city, and that together we can fight this by making sure we're registered and vote them out next year.
We're here at Federal Congress, DA Federal Congress here in Gallagher State, and with me is Councillor Tyrell Myers. How are you feeling? Tell us what's happening so far.
Excited. This is our largest Congress. I've been to many of these Congresses here. I was here in 2007 when we elected Helen Zille to replace Tony Leon. So very excited. Our biggest Congress, the energy is lit. Enough energy to power this country and replace Eskom.
Oh, wonderful.
Hi there, I'm here with Councillor Solomon Mahila, and he is, well, he's a special councillor because he's not a ward councillor, but he's been allocated by the DA to two wards, Ward 124 and Ward 68. But before we get to that, Solomon, first of all, welcome, and tell us all about who Solomon Mahila is.
How much time do you have?
Well, let's summarize.
No, thanks very much, Manny, for inviting me, to this podcast. Solomon Mahila is a Joburger to start with. I live in Ward 23 in the city of Johannesburg, a suburb called Liefde en Vrede, or Love and Peace in the English language. I am a DA councillor, proportional representation councillor PR, assigned to the two wards, as you have correctly referred to, Ward 68 in Riverlea and Ward 124 here in the inner city. In a nutshell, that's what Solomon Mahila is.
And tell me, when you say let's talk about each ward, let's start with 68. What areas are we talking about?
Ward 68 mainly consists of, Draverley. It also has places such as industrial waste. It also encapsulates areas such as Moy River and Pennyville. So those would be the major areas in Ward 68 of the city of Johannesburg.
And Ward 124?
Ward 124 is a huge ward,
yes.
Stretching right from the inner city. It covers many parts of the Boysons area, some parts of Terfontein, Kenilworth, Forest Hill, and so on. So it's a huge area, cosmopolitan largely, having a sizable number of foreign nationals and all manner of people from different communities. All races of people are found here, all ethnicities are to be found in Ward 124.
So tell me, for residents who are not sure what this means, what does it mean to be a PR councillor? What's that? How's that different to a ward councillor?
Well, a PR councillor is a councillor who is elected on a proportional representation list. Largely, the councillor who is a PR councillor would be a representative of his or her own political party in a specific ward. And the difference with a ward councillor is that a ward councillor would be a councillor who is directly elected by residents in a particular ward to serve as a political head once elected of all residents of that specific ward. So once a ward councillor is elected, he or she takes overall political responsibility for the ward, regardless of who, and serves everybody in the ward, regardless of who the person might have voted for.
All right. But tell us in each of the wards, what are the main 2 or 3 issues that you confront with?
If we were to start in Ward 68, the key fundamental challenge that we face in Ward 68 would be the issue of the abuse of drugs and other dependence-producing substances. And unfortunately, the drug problem, which is linked to the turf wars, fanned especially by the gangs that are operating in the area. Those challenges have unfortunately penetrated the schooling communities. You would recall many that you and I visited the Rivali High School in January this year, where we had a lengthy interview with the school principal, who told us some horrible stories about the drug trade in the area. But the second challenge that community faces is the issue of youth unemployment. You have a significant proportion of young people who are loitering in the streets of Rivali, Penneville, and all of those other communities of Moiriver and so on, who are unemployed, and for as long as that situation remains what it is, the problems of that community will not go away. Now, in Ward 124, you also have the same sort of problem, although it is not necessarily gang related, but you do have the challenge of drugs and other dependence producing substances. Given the cosmopolitan nature of the ward, that is to be expected. But you have a lot of cable thieving in Ward 124, and one is particularly concerned that the theft of cables in the ward affect even old age homes such as Ruven, where you need a significant presence of security personnel, because day in and day out there will be complaints or concerns coming out of Ruven that cables have been stolen, and with the winter approaching, that problem needs to be arrested pretty soon.
So what you're talking about is the overloading will obviously have an impact on outages, because it creates a heavy load where the city, or this part of the city, wasn't built for the numbers that it's got. So the city's not updating its or upgrading its infrastructure. I'm not correctly saying that.
Yeah, no, you are correct. We have over the years experienced some heavy influxes of people from all sorts of places. Many people who come from the neighboring countries in the SADC region, Lesotho, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe. But you also have other people who flock into the area from many parts of the country itself. You know, people who come from different provinces, Limpopo, the Eastern Cape, KZN, who finding the south of Johannesburg an attractive place to live in for whatever reason. But of course, there are those who settling in Ward 124 from other parts of North Africa. So that's the kind of challenge that we have with that perpetual mobility of people in Ward 124. And you have public infrastructure that is not necessarily designed for the sorts of influxes that we are experiencing. So that's a main challenge.
So you've mentioned that, very important, and obviously the fact that we are an economic magnet for not, as you mentioned, not just South Africa, but for the rest of Africa, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, where those countries are economically much worse than we are. And so we are a magnet, and you said, for whatever reason, people move to Joburg South. Joburg South's a beautiful part of the city. It's the oldest one. It's where the city was born. It's where the mining started. A lot of people don't know that. It is the oldest part of the city. But also, you have a great lifestyle. Even if you're not wealthy and you don't live in wealthy suburbs, you still have a great lifestyle. But you're saying that the issues of crime are not being addressed, the issues of unemployment, which talks to the economy, and the economy is not growing. And this is out of your purview, I know, but these are national and provincial government issues. But they're not confronting it. They're not dealing with growing our economy. At the moment, the projections are less than 1% growth. And that is very troublesome, not just for South Africans indeed, but then you've got the extra pressure of foreigners, and we can talk about that at a different time. If you're here legally, then that's great, but we have a problem with home affairs, with corruption, and allowing people in that shouldn't be in our country, that are not the kind of people we want immigration, we want it, but we want people who are going to contribute to the economy, people who've got skills. We don't want the drug dealers and the prostitutes and the criminals that come from other countries. We indeed want people that are going to add value to South Africa. So this notion about anybody being xenophobic, I think, is misled, because we want the good people. That's what built South Africa. The immigrants from all over the world and Africa came to build South Africa, even during apartheid days. That's a reality. But we're not growing the economy to the extent that we can then accommodate people, and that is a big concern. And these are the issues that we'll be talking in future podcasts. Anything else you need to tell us?
Yeah, well, I do agree with you, Benny, that many of the problems that are experienced in a cosmopolitan ward such as Ward 124 are matters that could be attended to by, national government, because there's very little that the city can do, for instance, with issues of migration into the city, into the south. So a lot of intergovernmental partnerships will have to be forged with the other spheres of government. But I also think that given that these two wards, 124 and 68, ANC ward, in the sense that we have ANC ward councillors in those wards who are almost absent. We should encourage residents to really make their political choices very, very soberly going into the future. I would be the happiest man the day we have all of these wards in the south of Johannesburg being DA wards, because there's a lot we can achieve if we were to turn these wards into DA wards, because everybody should know by now that the DA does get things done.
What you said is a very important point, and I hear from a lot of residents, that the wards, the DA wards in Joburg South, for example, are not, at the best optimum and so forth, and that's true, because many of the things that the councils are trying to fight is not only purely in their hands, it involves other processes and other levels of government, for example. But what you do get in DA run wards is you have a committed councillor who is, as you said, present. You said the other two ward councillors are almost invisible. I would challenge you by saying they actually are invisible. I've yet to see them ever. I've never met the Ward 68 councillor ever. He's not around. When you talk to residents of Riverlea, that's what they say. They don't see the councillor who's never around. The DA councillors, whether it's good or bad news, whether it's a bunch of residents who are very angry, sometimes very rightly, and they're directing it to the councillor, which again is misinformed a lot of the time. And I would be the first to say if the councillor did something wrong and it needs to be directed to the councillor, then good for you.
Yeah.
But what you do get is you get councillors, DA councillors who are committed, who are on the ground.
Yeah.
And you make a very important point. In DA wards, you don't see them.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you rather have a ward councillor that at least is around and available to at least try and fight on your behalf than absentee councillor?
No, agreed. I mean, even if ward councillors cannot do or solve all of the problems that residents face, but it is important for a ward councillor to be present. So the sooner we get the ANC councillors replaced in Ward 68 and 124, the better shall it be for the residents of those communities who are practically using me as a ward councillor because they cannot get hold of the ward councillors who should actually be fighting the residents' battles on their behalf.
Thank you very much, Solomon. A very important point that Councillor Maile has made, and that is that look at facts. Don't believe what any of our councillors are saying, what I'm saying. Look at the real facts. Look at the facts in Joburg where there are DA councillors that are committed, they're available, they're interested. They may not always have the successes, but at least they're there fighting for our residents. And where we do govern, we govern outright. I'll just put a word in while we're talking about it, is where we govern outright. It's a fact that we govern well. Where there is corruption, it's dealt with immediately and stopped straight away. In fact, the recent budget in Cape Town is the biggest pro-poor budget ever in history in a local government that's just been passed. So people are benefiting. And it's not a coincidence that where we govern, Midvaal, just down the road, 20 minutes down the road, it's Midvaal. Look at that, highest employment rate in the province, the most well-run city, the happiest status of life. People are happy with their governments, they're getting responses, and you don't have a mayor in an ivory tower. He is with his councillors and on the ground, always present. And that is what happens when we have an outright government. Where it is more complicated, it does get more complicated with coalitions. But we'll talk about coalitions a little bit later. But I want to thank you because you do two councillors' work. You're doing two wards. Even though they're not your wards, DA wards, you are still on the ground fighting for residents, even though those residents didn't directly elect you. You're fighting the best you can, and that's the DA difference. And as you say, you get things done.
And on top of that, I remain the chairperson of the Public Safety Committee in the city, which basically means that matters relating to the safety and security of residents in the whole of the city of Johannesburg are matters that fall under my purview. And we continue to do the best we can to serve all the 6 million residents of the city of Johannesburg. We are not complaining because this is what we have chosen to do, and that is to serve the people of Johannesburg.
So as you can hear, Solomon Maile, a very busy man, not only a councillor looking after two wards, but also a chairman of a committee, and that's not just rocking up in a committee, it means preparing it an agenda, it's also actual work, interacting with the MMC to make sure that our residents are as safe as possible. But that's a long way to go. But thank you for everything you do. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
In this election, only the registered have the power. If you're tired of load shedding, register to vote. If you're tired of corruption, register to vote. If you're tired of the rising cost of living, register to vote. And If you're tired of a government that's continuously working against you, register to vote. Go to check.da.org.za and let's give power to the registered.